So today we learn how to apply one-to-many relationship using Eloquent ORM model in Laravel. That is somewhat advanced things. So in a model, we have three models. There is a marks, subject, and user. And here we have a table structure for this. So for example, model has this type of relations: foreign key, user ID, subject ID, and subject table is this, and users table is this. So how you plan this model relations? For example, user has many marks, so there is has many marks, and that marks that marks has you belongs to such users, so there is a user ID. If I say subject has many marks, so that subject has many marks, so in a marks belongs to such subject. So these are the identity that is underscore as a foreign key, where you say marks belongs to such user, marks belongs to such subject. Where in a users model there is user has many marks, user has many subject has many marks. So now I just make the one to many relations here. One to one is simple. One model to another model, where we plan one model with another model with one to many is, for example, as I told you, this is one of the example. There is one post has many comments. Very similarly, one user has many marks, one student has many marks, in that way. So right now I have this model. So I apply the model relationship. Then I call that model data over here with the relations. So where you find the data which is in a join kind of data. For example, I can retrieve from multiple tables data. So in the marks, there is, I just supposed to create public function. This marks belongs to such user. So I plan that user as a method. And that marks belongs to such user. How you define? Because there is a user underscore ID. So I just define that return this current class object which belongs to user class object, and you have to import or use that is use that model name is user. Now I want another method that is for the subject detail. So I just write public function subject, which subject belongs to subject as a class. So marks are belongs to such user as well as such subject. So in that way you define that user belongs to, sorry, marks belongs to this user, marks belongs to this subject. Now that also I need to use subject. So this is, we are making relations with marks to user, marks to subject. Now I want to do in different mode. User has many marks, so I need to add here one method, that is user public function has many marks. So user has many marks. So user has given number of exam and there are number of marks. So that is has many as a marks. Now as a type def, we want to specify that type as well. For example, that is belongs to, that is belongs to. It is not necessary, but you can plan that belongs to. And if you add that belongs to, so you need to add that belongs to as a class name, as an import statement. So this has done from the mark model. I want to do something within the user side. So here I supposed to say has many, and I want to add this two class. One is mark, another one is has many. So I just use here use has many, use mark. Done. So this two class I have added, has many and marks. Now very similarly, if you want subject wise number of marks, so then you have to define public function to subject has many marks. So here you write has many, and that is has many mark. Now I use that is mark and I use has many. So in that way you have defined one to many relations with two different models. Now I want to test it. I want to check this, how I get this advantages of marks and something. So right now I use, suppose without model relations, that data comes in an index method call. So I call that marks. So the data comes, that is single object, nothing which is joined. For example, I see here these are the marks, but there is a user ID, there is a subject ID. So I don't know what is the student name, what is the user name, what is the subject name. So how could I find this? So I would like to suggest, after completing this, you have to do this. For example, mark is a model. With is what? With is your, that model has such relations, so you want such relations data, you put over here that method name. For example, I want user detail, so I supposed to use that method name like user in a with, for example, that is user. So I supposed to show you that is single one data. So in a single user's data I show you, see return is there. So here you find that user detail. So this is my marks and this is user's object. So how that user object comes? Because you have implement that method. That marks belongs to which user, and how you call this? With this with method, right? So how you find that user's details? In this way. Another way of getting that user's details only, so you can plan, for example, I want, for example, mark as a model, and you want that, for example, mark with, or I can say, for example, mark. That is similar, but I supposed to give you another example later on. But finish first mark and subject. Now I just finished. So another data is for the subject. So how could I make this possible? So I just write user and another one is subject. So in a with method, you can plan multiple models relations, that is belongs to. So user model also comes and subject model also comes. So you just check this. So this is somewhat users model and subject model. Now you want this data in your blade file. So you just write, for example, this is my data and here is the nested JSON. So I write user. Then what I need to write, that user name I want. So I write in this way. If I want subject details, so I write mark dot subject ID. Sorry, subject name. So here I find the data with that student's name and marks as a detail. Save, refresh. Here you find student name because I have written this user dash name and subject as name. Now I show you another things. Vice versa, you want data from user side. For example, I don't want to create another controller, you see here, but later on if you want something within the user controller, you can plan. But here I show you, I supposed to use user and I want that user's data. For example, use that user and subject both the way. So I use, for example, all the data of that user. So I just write user get, and when I return it, so that user's data comes. There are three users. I want that users how many exam they have given. So for example, I write user, then I write where, and in a where I supposed to say that ID is 2, so that second user only comes, that is Smith. Okay, now I want that user data which I have already added in my marks table. So I supposed to add one another with what, with marks. So in that marks I will find user has many marks, so that marks will comes here. So here you can see this Rohit has given this many exams, CA1, CA2, SWE for subject ID that one. Now subject ID to CA1, CA2, CA, SWE. So this is the way you find the data. Now you have another query. For example, sir, I want this exam is this, that marks is this, but I don't know what is the subject ID 1. So what is the name of that subject? So you can add over here with, that is, marks dot subject, because in a marks you have a subject as a method. For example, user has many marks. Now in a marks model you have a subject. So you can plan with method marks dot subject. So here you find that data as well. For example, this is my exam marks. This is my user. These are their exams marks, and which subject that belongs to, that also comes. So in that way you find the data. Now in another way you want to get the data. So here we have examples of, for example, I have a user 1 and I want all the comments of it or all the data of that mark. So here also you can find, for example, return user, and supposed to find 1 2 3 whatever, and you want all the marks. So in this way, so here you find all the marks of that users only. Yeah, because I didn't put here something. For example, this is comments. Okay, in a comments I want subject and get method is required. So here you find all the data of user, which user ID is 2. So user 2 CA1 marks and its subject you will find here. So in this way also you can make it possible. And in a marks you want specific subject, so you can plan the where clause. For example, where my subject ID is only 1. So here is the subject 1, subject 1, 1, 1, subject 2 is there. So I do this where clause. So I will find only subject 1 data. If I say 2, then it is only subject 2 data. So in that way you can plan that model relations with one to many, right? And if you want to make the one to one, so here you just write has one, but it works in where you have such example. For example, I have one mobile, I belongs to, oh, this mobile belongs to one user, I belongs to such city and this city, something like. So in that way you define that model one to one, and this is such examples. So here you do the practice on this, and I suppose to do this way where you get the data in details, and here you find the data of subject name and student name. Okay, thank you everyone.